Have you heard anybody ask why there's bees in the chicken feed? Maybe you live in the country and you have friends that have chickens. Maybe you are a beekeeper and you have chickens. Well, today we're going to talk about what's going on in January, February in East Texas and what the bees are doing. We've been keeping bees for over 9 years. We have 5 different apiaries and about 50 hives on average per year that we manage. We love to teach beekeeping classes, and we especially love to help people in the East Texas area figure out how to be the best beekeepers they can be. So if you're from East Texas or if you've been here very long, you know as well as I do that the winters are very unpredictable. One of the things that we can have is we can have 70-degree days. Yesterday, in fact, it was in the 60s and my husband was still in shorts. But we can also have weather in the teens. And this not only can confuse our wardrobe, it can confuse the bees. So one of the things that's going on right now is the trees are blooming. The trees tend to start blooming in January, sometimes even as early as late December. So what does this mean for the bees? Well, the bees get a lot of their protein from trees. Okay, wait, we were talking about chickens. How does the protein and the pollen that's coming off the trees relate to chickens? Guess what? It's in chicken feed. So if you've got friends that have chickens, or if you're on social media, we've all seen the questions in garden groups or farming groups or just about any kind of group. Help, there's bees in my chicken feed. And I try to calmly respond and say, just calm down. It's gonna be a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the bees will be fine. But they're looking for pollen right now. How do I know this? I'm about to show you. So as beekeepers, we do manipulate the bees. Some people manipulate the bees more than others, but everything that we do, trying to keep this colony of bees in the box that we decide the measurements for, and I mean, we've decided it based on what they want, but all of it is a form of manipulation, especially if we're going to try and collect pollen or if we're going to try and collect nectar, i.e. honey. All of that, we manipulate them. So one of the ways is you might plant a field of wildflowers, or you might plant clover, or you might plant something else that you know that makes really good honey. That's one form of manipulation. Another very common form of manipulation is putting out pollen right now. So right now for us here in East Texas, it's actually February 7th. So you can see the weather. It's pretty sunny out. It's probably in the high 50s. It may hit 60 today. The bees are out working. We just had, like 2 days ago, we went through 3 days of freezing temperatures, snow, ice, everything. So of course, during those 3 days, the bees were buckled up. They were in the hive. They were not coming out for anything. And then as it warmed up over the weekend, they started coming out again. So my husband, for the first time, and usually he's here with me, but he happens to be at his regular job, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to show you what's going on right over there. So my husband this weekend, while we were cleaning out a garage, he found one of those political signs. It was a past political sign, so we're not taking them illegally or anything, but he found a political sign and he kind of modified it to make it into a pollen feeder. Now, in the past, we've really never fed pollen. And for the most part in East Texas, you don't need to feed pollen. So this is not necessarily a beginner beekeeper topic, but it's good even as a beginner for you to start learning maybe what to do next. Maybe next year you add pollen, or maybe something in the future, whatever. But it's also good just to understand what's going on. So the trees are blooming. They're blooming everywhere. In fact, anytime now we're going to see the redbud trees actually blooming. But a lot of trees that bloom that we don't see are like the elm trees and the oak trees, all of that. How do we know? Well, if you look at them from far away, they'll start to have a green tint to them, and those are just the buds, and all of that has pollen in it. And so what's happening right now in East Texas is the trees they're blooming, they're budding out, and the bees are collecting pollen. But bees, like us, they like the easy way. So if you put pollen in one place and a lot of it, they're going to go there versus working a branch of a tree. Now, the more that the trees bloom out, the more they're going to be working the trees. But right now, the bees on my property are kind of going crazy for this pollen feeder. So let's go check it out. Okay, so I told you that this pollen feeder is going to move. He made it this weekend, and he just stuck it up really close to the house, probably not thinking that what is about to happen was going to be what happened. But now I will say they're very happy. The bees are happy, but they did buzz me. I just went out and had to put pigs away, and they were buzzing me. So they're just curious. They're looking for things. They're looking for pollen, probably looking for nectar. But quite honestly, I would just rather this herd of bees be further away from my house, and I'll show you why. Okay, so here we are, and this is our pollen feeder, and you can see this is the place to be right now. The bees are all over it. They are working it like crazy, and I can see some of the bees walking, flying off with their pollen baskets full. Their legs will have the pollen on them, and yeah, they're loading up. Inside is like a bed of bees. So these girls are super happy, and like I said, this is the first time we've done this, and obviously they like it. So I have a feeling that we're going to be doing this more often. But this is just a simple homemade pollen feeders. Here's our protein feeder. You can see it's just a political sign that he's wrapped around a couple pieces of wood, and then he stapled it together. So you can see about how long it is, and then that wood just kind of holds the protein in there, the pollen. So anyway, there you go. And so they just fly in, collect the pollen, store it in their legs, and fly out. And you can see they're just everywhere. So if you're a new beekeeper, if this is your first year to get bees, obviously this is not something that you're going to be doing. By the time you get your bees, which is typically sometime in April, they're well past the pollen stage. But let me explain why they're so fixed on pollen right now. Pollen's always the first sign of spring, right? Like I told you, the trees start blooming in January, and so as they start bringing pollen into the hive, the queen then is basically aware that there's pollen. That means spring is coming. That means flowers are going to bloom and all that other stuff. Honey's on its way. So she starts ramping up production, and that's what she's doing now. She's been doing it since probably the middle of January. And so by adding a pollen feeder, we're just increasing the pollen that's going into the hives. Now, like I said, we just did this weekend. It's the first time we've done it. We have 4 other bee yards, and we don't have a pollen feeder out there. It's not something that we have to be doing. But when people ask you, why are the bees eating my chicken feed? It's because that powdered feed in there has a pretty high pollen content. And that's why we feed the chickens all those little crumbles and everything. And that's what the bees are trying to get out of there. They're probably also getting some other nutrients, micronutrients, and vitamins and that kind of thing. It's not a problem. They're not going to sting the chickens. Yes, the chickens may not like them. You could put out multiple feeders. You can move the feeder inside the coop. There's a couple different things that a chicken person can do. But the reality is, in the long run, this is only a couple weeks. It's only a couple weeks when they use that. How do you know when you can put it away? They won't show up anymore. And that's literally the truth. When they stop showing up, then we know that we've moved on. And it's probably going to be some early nectar sources and some other things that draw them away and get them foraging other places. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. It's kind of like I don't know, a little bee crazy place over there. So pretty interesting. If you like to just watch bees, you may want to do that. I mean, I was pretty close. None of them even really, like, when I say they buzz you, sometimes they'll like actually bump into your head, and none of them did that. A couple of them kind of flew around looking at me, but they were not concerned with me being there at all, although I am going to move it. So I do like to watch bees, but I don't want to walk back and forth several times a day and have to deal with that. So anyway, pollen feeder, super easy. You probably have stuff around your house that you could make an easy pollen feeder with. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please like our channel, subscribe. We would love to follow along on your beekeeping journey and keep educating you about all these interesting little facets of bees. Happy beekeeping.